I'm here by the sea. Good morning, it's April 3rd here in beautiful Spring, Nova Scotia, and then today I'm going to plant some squash in my tulip garden. Hi, it's Greg Otten here with MaritimeGardening.com. Hey there, it's Greg Otten with MaritimeGardening.com. I thought I'd do a really quick video just to follow up on the root cellar hack video I did. The video I showed how I store my seed potatoes for the coming year. I had a few questions about that, and I realized I didn't speak to those issues in the video, so I thought I'd just do a little quick follow-up on that. So I did a video where I dug up this here compost box and buried my potatoes in a cooler here, seed potatoes for the following year. Number one, why do I feel it's necessary to do that? The reason is because in previous years, when I have stored the potatoes in my garage, which stays nice and cool all winter long, maybe 5 or 6 degrees Celsius all winter long, it's still in that garage. It starts to heat up in April. And I don't usually plant the potatoes in the ground until end of April, early May, or mid-May, or even later, because the ground here is still quite cold early in the year. So, and I'm concerned that it's too cold for them. So what happens is, because the garage starts getting warm in the spring, the potatoes start growing these long eyes. And you can use seed potatoes with long eyes as seed potatoes. You'll still get potatoes out of them. But I have found that the yield is compromised. So a good yield for a potato is maybe 10 potatoes per plant or more. A lousy yield is like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And I find that when the eyes are really long, you don't get as many potatoes. And so, I want to get the most out of my effort as I can. So I theorize that it's just the reason they're getting long eyes is because it's warm. The potatoes think it's spring, so they're trying to grow, and they're looking for sunlight. So they're growing until they find sunlight. And that's why they're getting these long eyes, because they can't find sunlight, right? They're in a box. So I thought, well, if I can keep them cold for longer, maybe the eyes won't start growing. So how can I do that? Well, why don't I just mimic the conditions that they would have naturally in nature, where they're underground in a place that, waiting for spring. So I theorized that I could do that in my these giant boxes here, and it seems to work. Now, another question I had was, isn't it too hot in your boxes? Aren't they compost boxes? There's composting going on in these boxes, but they're cold composted. They're not hot in there. I just add layers. Especially in recent years, I've stopped sort of adding material. I just use these like hugelkultur beds. They're basically like giant raised beds. I got tired of putting stuff in here and then putting it on my garden and so on. When I get manure now, I put the manure relatively fresh on the gardens in the fall and just let it sit there all winter. And by spring it's broken down. That's a lot easier than putting manure in here, turning it over, taking it out, putting it over there. The weeds still grow anyway, right? And then putting more manure here. That seems like a waste of time. Why don't I just use this as a place to grow things? And just add, all I do now is add about 4 inches manure to the top, and any yard waste or anything I have, I add here as well. But it doesn't get very hot because I'm not turning it over. I'm not putting fish guts and other things in here, right? It's relatively cool. So, if I stuck my hand deep into one of these, I could just check right now. Let's see. So if I feel down, yeah, it's not hot in there. It's not cooking, that's for sure. This is cold compost. There's, it's cooler than my skin, that's for sure. It's not hot. This is not hot. So, this is a cold part of the world. It's not a hot part of the world. I guess this would depend on your inputs, but generally speaking, unless you're taking great aims to accelerate or facilitate composting, your compost beds just get cold in the winter, and the top foot or so freezes solid anyway. I don't find I have a lot going on here. If you had a huge pile of fresh manure, yeah, that would continue. The core of that would continue to cook away. But this isn't that densely filled with that much organic material, so it doesn't get that hot. It probably gets fairly warm in the summer, but during the winter it doesn't get hot. It seems to just be just right for here, for this area. This is zone 6, and we have a zone 6 winter, and this seems to be just right for storing potatoes. I guess that's the other question. Does this work for all zones? Well, if you're if you're somewhere hotter, then you probably don't want to. You'd probably want to bury it in the ground where it's cooler than above ground. And also, if you're in a hotter area, you probably don't want to bury it in any kind of compost pile. You probably want to bury it just in the actual soil if you're going to use that approach. And the one thing about even if you bury stuff in the ground, once you've made a hole in the ground, it's easier to dig in that spot, right? Because you removed all the roots and everything like that. So, I mean, it only took me 15 minutes to stick these in the ground. That's a lot easier than building a root cellar. It'd be great to have a big elaborate root cellar. And if I lived in, tornado country, I'd probably need something like that to hide in when things get bad, but we don't need that here. And if you're somewhere colder, you just need to bury it deeper, I guess, right? Or you could probably adjust by putting more organic matter in to make the compost pile hotter. But I'm speaking from where I am. This works for where I am. We have a zone 6 winter here. It gets to the coldest it gets here is like -20. I mean, it can get colder with the wind chill and all that sort of stuff. But -20 Celsius is about as cold as it gets here. And this seems to work. And it's not, most of the winter it isn't -20. It's like -10, that sort of thing, -5, -10, and so on. There's, it might be a week or so, you might have a cold snap where it's like -20 or even -22 or something. This seems to work for here. So if you're somewhere colder or somewhere hotter, just play with it and adjust it up and see how it goes. You don't have to completely commit, right? My life doesn't depend on this. If all these potatoes turn to mush, I'll just buy seed potatoes and I'll be fine, right? It's good to play with this. I know there's some people that watch this that are preppers and so on and so forth. At this point in time, you can, if you're of that mentality, then you're just learning and experimenting, right? So I'm trying to see how would I do this. I would love to be completely self-sufficient and have all my potatoes be from potatoes I grew previous year. But it's worth just playing around, because if this is a complete fail, I'll just go spend $20 and buy some other seed potatoes and try something else the next year. It's really not. It's always worth just playing around and experimenting and seeing what works and what doesn't. So give it a try if you haven't tried it before. I did this last year and it worked. So this year I put more. Last year I just had a styrofoam cooler, and it even broke open, and at some point in the winter it was completely compromised, and the potatoes were still viable. So this year I got a bigger cooler and put more potatoes in. So we'll see how that works. And if this works good, then next year I'll go even bigger, right? All right, so I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, check us out on Facebook, like the video, and check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Until next time, get out there, get at it, and have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.